Hi, good evening, everyone. It's Gracie Liu, General Manager for the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment. I am here tonight to go over the Neighborhood Empowerment proposed budget for fiscal year 2014-2015. And we are doing this with the partnership of the Neighborhood Council Budget Advocates. So I really want to thank them for their volunteer work and helping the city with its budget and also with our department budget too. So you're not going to see my face, you're just going to see the PowerPoint presentation, and I'm going to go through everything. You can actually, if you have any questions, you can email us at outreach@empowerla.org, or you can tweet us at #EmpowerLA. We'll get that question and then we will answer it towards the end when we have the feedback and question session. So on the screen right now, you can see our online, where you can find the current fiscal year budget information online. And if you like, you can access that just to see what the current budget information is. The other documents that I'm going to refer to, I'll be summarizing them in this PowerPoint presentation, but you can go online at EmpowerLA.org, and Stephen's going to tell you where exactly it is.
On the top right-hand side, there's a button that says 2014 budget. And if you click that button, you'll see all 4 documents, the PowerPoint presentation, and 3 supporting documents.
Okay. So I'm wondering, can we turn that down a second here? Okay. So when we're preparing our budget, we are looking at Mayor Garcetti's Back to Basics priority outcomes. And you can see that he has 9 of them. And if you've been following Mayor Garcetti's budget work, then you will be familiar with these 9 priority outcomes. The first 4 actually are focused on basically the results that the stakeholders throughout the city can see. And the 5 through 9 are how we are going to work in order to get to those 4. Now, when you look at neighborhood council's work, it's easy to see how neighborhood councils actually do the volunteer work that they does affect 1 through 4 priority outcomes. There are neighborhood councils that are working on job creation, on business protection in throughout the city. There's definitely neighborhood councils that are working with city departments on making cities livable and attractive, whether that be through pothole repair, tree trimming. A lot of neighborhood councils are working with LAPD to make their communities safer. And other neighborhood councils are working on sustainability issues in their local neighborhoods. So if you see number 9, partner with citizens and civic groups to build a greater city, that is basically the focus of most of our department budget, because we support neighborhood councils in their work in meeting the other priority outcomes. And one of the things that we also want to focus on is great customer service in terms of all the work that we do. So to reach his priority outcomes, Mayor Garcetti's Back to Basics agenda focuses on using performance budgeting. And you can see that we have a projected general fund deficit of up to $242 million for fiscal year 2014 to 2015. So that means that we actually aren't necessarily finding new resources, but Mayor Garcetti really wanted to change the way that we do budgeting so that we're looking at the priority outcomes that we're delivering and trying to reach, as opposed to just basic cuts to the department. So to do that, we've been asked to prioritize our work, and when the mayor's office, the CAO, and city council are looking at our budget, they're going to look at those areas that we put a higher priority to, so that we can receive more money in those areas. And for those that have lower priorities, they'll look to reduce or eliminate those activities. In terms of innovations, the mayor has also asked the CAO to put together an innovation fund so that there will be monies available to projects that would really help with the delivery services in an innovative way. And so that's something that we can look forward to in terms of other potential resources. So after we present our budget, they will be evaluated in regards to those priority outcomes, and we'll be also providing measurable data and metrics so that we can every year we're measuring, were we successful in trying to attain our goals. And they'll also look at the added value and the cost effectiveness in terms of what we're investing into these programs. And obviously that focus on excellent customer service is something that we definitely want to keep in our minds as well. So for the fiscal year 2014-2015 general budget, general fund budget proposal for our departments, we have been asked to start at a 95% amount of our adopted 2013-2014 budget. So if you look at Neighborhood Empowerment's 5-year history of budget and position authorities in terms of staffing, you'll see, we've definitely been very high at one point and very low at another, and we are starting to build our resources back up. And when we look at positions, there are 2 different types of positions. One is called the regular authority, and that's just authority that we get every year for that staff position. And then there are resolution authorities, which are only good for that fiscal year. And so every year we have to, if we want to continue in that position, we actually have to request it in our budget. And you can see that our adopted budget for this current fiscal year is about $2.5 million. And our proposed budget for 2014-2015 is at $3 million. So we actually, in looking at our priority outcomes and how we can meet those outcomes, we have an increase of about 18% in our current budget and package. And so we are looking at, rather than starting at the 95%, we are looking actually at an 18% increase. And we are asking to increase our staffing to 27 regular authority staff. So for fiscal year 2014-2015, in terms of our department priorities, the major priority outcome that we're working with, again, is number 9 for Mayor Garcetti's priority outcomes, and that's partnering with citizens and civic groups to build a greater city. And you can see our 5 main programs, and one being funding. And, the work that we're doing is pretty much the same work that we do every year. When you start looking through these descriptions, you'll see it's very difficult to cut services in any one area, or to scale back, because they're all so important and they're all necessary for neighborhood council success. So the neighborhood council funding program, as you know, we've been really pushing to try to get a checking account system implemented, and it looks like, fingers crossed, that we will be able to open those first checking accounts in January. And so we wanted to prioritize and make sure that neighborhood councils have access to their funds and that we can provide that access in a timely manner. And with the checking accounts, because we don't actually know exactly the total cost it will to actually implement that checking account system, since we haven't gone through it yet, we will be requesting more support, monetary support in that area, just to make sure that once we get it started, that we make sure that it's successful for neighborhood councils. The second program area is the direct assistance and training for neighborhood council boards. Now, this is basically our field work. So you'll see that we not only support neighborhood councils that are struggling, we also operate our helpline for them, and we work with our volunteer mentors through our Councils for Councils program and the Valley Alliance of Neighborhood Councils Resource Board. And then we provide regular quarterly trainings, not only regionally, but we also work with neighborhood councils at their retreats to make sure that they have continued capacity building access. And we partner with a lot of the other city departments in order to provide knowledge and training on how best to work with these city departments. So there's a lot of stuff that goes on in the direct assistance training, and that's not even including some of the work we do with approving bylaws. There's definitely some technical aspects to that as well. So we also are looking at, in the third program, expanding outreach and communication efforts for the neighborhood council system. So, I think this past year, we're very lucky in terms of being able to bring on staff that could support outreach, particularly in an election year for neighborhood councils. And, we started some good momentum with launching Nextdoor last week. We're hoping to launch Nation Builder, if not this week, then very soon, shortly thereafter. And we're looking for new ways to do outreach, and I think this year we'll see a major increase throughout the city of increasing the awareness of neighborhood councils. So we don't want that to lapse in between election years. So we want to continue that momentum, and that feeds into the 2016 elections. And so it's important to keep supporting the outreach for neighborhood councils. We also actually have had increases in terms of other city departments requesting our assistance in working with neighborhood councils and doing outreach for them, such as the Los Angeles Fire Department and Rec and Parks recently. So we want to continue these partnerships as well, and also reach out to other city departments and provide education opportunities on how they can best work with neighborhood councils directly too. And our outreach and communication team also develop online tools to basically track not only the department's performance metrics, but also neighborhood councils. So you've seen lately, not only the controller has been posting this information on the website, but we have as well. And in terms of neighborhood councils and how they spend their funds. And this type of information is very important in terms of tracking and seeing if we're meeting our performance metrics, not only at the department level, but also neighborhood councils. For our neighborhood council policies and systems programs, this is basically the support that we provide to the Board of Neighborhood Commissioners, to the Neighborhood Council budget advocates, the Congress of Neighborhoods. We track the community impact statements that are filed for neighborhood council or by neighborhood councils about council files. And next year, we will actually be implementing the new grievance policy as well. So it's important that we continue this work in terms of updating all the policies and to make sure that we maintain streamlined types of policies and procedures so that we can improve the neighborhood council system overall. And lastly, we do have our neighborhood council administrative support. So if you're doing leases and contracts, or if you have PRAs that are Public Records Act requests, not only for the department, but for neighborhood councils, we do have staff that provide that support directly, so we can actually speed up the process versus the traditional contract and leasing process through the city, which could be pretty burdensome. Our administrative support actually also assists us with some basic IT computer support around the office as well. So here, if you see, this goal and metrics for the Department of Neighbor Empowerment. These goals and metrics are actually what's currently we are tracking for the department for this fiscal year. So you can see the layout, and I just included it here because you can see the layout in terms of the priority outcome, the type of metric that we're tracking, when we're reporting, what type of goal is it? Is it performance or is it project? Do we currently track it? And because performance budgeting is new, a lot of the performance metrics that we are asking or having to do, we haven't actually tracked some of those numbers before. So we want to identify that and the language in terms of description of the goal, why it's important for us to track this information, and our target values. So for those of you who are filing community impact statements, or if you're not, please note that this current fiscal year, we are hoping that neighbor councils will be filing 300 community impact statements. So that's literally like three community impact statements per neighborhood council that we hope that you will file this current fiscal year, because we want you to be that advisory body to the city council. So just note that. Anyway, that's my little pitch for community impact statements. The other thing is that when we are submitting our proposed 2014-2015 budget, we will be putting together some new performance metrics that we will try to meet the next year, and it will look similarly to this current goals and metrics for this fiscal year. So I told you before that we were looking at an 18% increase to $3 million budget for the department, and where this increase comes from is from these areas of proposed changes. So some of this is just cleaning up positions and trying to streamline and make our streamline our positions and make the department work more efficiently in terms of changing positions that are vacant right now into positions that we think will be more beneficial for the department. And so I'll go through each of the programs. And for the Neighbor Council funding program, we're asking to retain resolution authorities for a management assistant 2 and a project assistant. So these two positions actually were brought in this current fiscal year to work under elections, but we needed some more support in the funding area. We wanted to take we had 3 neighborhood empowerment analysts that were working in funding that we want to take at least 2 of them back and put them back into the field to support the neighbor council operations there. So we moved the management analyst 2 and the project assistant into the funding program, and we hope to maintain that. We did get an authority to fill an accountant 1 position this current fiscal year. However, when we try to do that, we found that the position that's right below an accountant 1 is accounting clerk, and it appears that because of the varying success of different bargaining units or unions, that an accounting clerk actually makes more than an accountant 1. So there was no benefit for the accounting clerks to try to promote to accountant 1 position. So we've not been able to fill that position. Come on in. We've not been able to fill that position. There are handouts right there if you want to grab in a sign sheet. We've not been able to fill that position as we hoped. So I think in order for us to actually fill that accountant 1 position, we have to actually make it an accountant 2 position. So so that's another request. We wanted to change the resolution authorities for senior accountant 2 and accounting clerk 2 to regular authorities. And if you remember, I said earlier, A regular authority is just the position authority that we get funded for every year automatically. And a resolution one is one that we have to ask for each year. So we're hoping to make those resolution authorities regular ones. And we wanted to add $160,000 for as needed positions to make sure that this transition to the checking account program is indeed successful. As I stated before, we don't know because we haven't been able to implement it yet how much work it's going to take. So we've set aside these funds for as needed positions such as an admin intern, student professional worker, a clerk typist, or an accounting clerk to help us in case we do need additional support in that in the new funding program. In the field program, we have a vacant resolution authority for neighborhood empowerment analyst, and we want to go ahead and change that to a regular authority management analyst 1. It helps us in terms of providing support to the neighborhood councils and also providing a means of promotional opportunities for folks who work in the field. I don't know if you're aware, but a neighbor empowerment analyst, the only analysts of this type are in the Department of Neighbor Empowerment, so it's very difficult to promote because there's no other position above the neighbor empowerment analyst, such as if you had one for management analyst, you have management analyst 1, management analyst 2, a senior management analyst 1, 2, and then a chief management analyst. So this is also something that we were looking at in terms of the sustainability of the department as well in terms of positions. So for neighborhood council outreach, communications, and elections, we wanted to add 2 regular authority project assistants to basically continue this work that we've been doing with outreach and communications, and to continue with our performance metrics on online tools, and to support other city departments in terms of the outreach that I was telling you about that we're doing. We also wanted to add $120,000 for outreach expenses and any future online platforms for neighborhood councils and department, not only for transparency, but again the new ways, the new tools we want to offer for neighborhood councils to reach out to their stakeholders. So this outreach expense is something that we actually have in the current fiscal year in the amount of $160,000, and we just wanted to make sure that there are funds for outreach in the off-election years because as you all know, outreach is ongoing 24/7. It doesn't just happen during an election year. So we wanted to make sure again that we don't lose that momentum that we're gaining with the outreach that we've been doing. So for neighborhood council planning and policy, when the city council takes the final action, well actually they have taken final action to approve the next steps of changing the grievance policy to that citywide peer grievance panel policy. It'll be implemented on July 1st, the new fiscal year, and we will be requesting a project coordinator position with that to not only set it up, but to monitor it, to track it, and then that project coordinator position would also be assisting with continued policy work, as well as tracking council files and community impact statements, tracking and reporting for neighborhood councils. And lastly, for neighborhood council administration, this is just some of the realignment that I was telling you about in terms of efficiencies and sustainability for the department. We wanted to change the systems analyst 2 that we have that actually has been vacant for the past several months, and that's the person who does basically the IT work around the office. And we want to change it to a fiscal systems specialist 1. And this position does not only the systems aspect of the work, but also has an accounting background as well. And we think that that's going to be really helpful for us when we transition to the new checking account program, or excuse me, system. And then we want to make sure that we provide online tools and trackers for transparency reasons, and we would need a position that could kind of do both. So the last thing is the added chief management analyst to assist with performance metrics, information collection and review. And this is basically someone that would assist in, now that we're doing all this performance metrics and we're tracking this stuff, it takes a lot of work, mostly because we're actually doing a lot of hand counting because we don't have the online systems or the case management systems electronically that would help simplify this process. So we're hoping that not only we'll be able to develop these processes, but also to have the staff to make sure that we can actually track it efficiently and to actually review it on a regular basis. So I don't even know if you guys can see this. So you might want to refer to your handouts that you can get. But this is our current organizational structure. And you basically will see that me as the GM, and then Janet is our executive assistant. We have the 5 programs with their managers going across the third line, which would be Jeff, Stephen, Joe, Armando, and Layla. And you can see under some of the staff, some of the managers, their staffing. Just note that this does not show any as-needed staff. So, for instance, Stephen, is supervising a lot of as-needed for elections right now, but they don't show up because they actually aren't a regular or a resolution authority. So we wouldn't put that into our current organizational structure, even though technically he does have those supervisory duties. So if we were to implement the changes that we were just discussing in the previous slide, the org chart will look more like this, and you can see a lot more in terms of some balance in terms of support staff for each of the programs. And again, I apologize for the lack of clarity on here, but hopefully you've downloaded the PowerPoint and you can actually see this much more clearly. So we're at the feedback and questions session or section of our presentation. Again, you can email a question at outreach@empowerla.org, or you can tweet at #EmpowerLA a question. And we have some folks here in the room with me live. So if you have questions, you can definitely ask them at this time. Again, this was a very broad overview in terms of our budget and which direction we're going. The budget is due on Friday, and we will be finalizing our budget probably by Wednesday, and based on any feedback that we get tonight. Questions? Yeah. Oh. Question. You could have asked this. Okay, I don't think I can read this. Any systemic initiative to increase Spanish bilingualism at much lower cost to individual entities with regard to written agendas and minutes and oral real-time translation at meetings and events. So yes, there actually is something. This is basically a question about will the department be able to assist neighborhood councils in their translation and interpretation services. And yes, we are looking into something through our equity report that our policy director Joe Hari is working on. We are looking at how where basically how we can reinvest some of the funds that are not used by neighborhood councils each year, because sometimes they're, actually every year there are leftover funds, and somehow creating an account that maybe is just for translation and interpretation that um, uh, neighborhood councils can utilize. There are other uh, ideas too that we've been looking at, and so that report, we're going to be finalizing that report in the next month or so, and hopefully you'll be able to provide some feedback, but we'll have some other ideas in regards to translation, interpretation, and other capacity building for equity reasons throughout the city of Los Angeles. You can orally ask.
Oh, I have a quick question
Yes.
about the community impact statements.
Yes.
Your targeted value, your targeted goal of 300, is that something is that new? And I walked in late for everyone else who's listening.
Yeah.
Is that something that we've been doing every year, or?
So the question, in case that I didn't pick up, is whether or not the in the performance metrics, which are for this year, you'll see that the first one is about community impact statements and the target value being 300. No, it's not something that we ever had a targeted value on, because this performance metrics and budgeting this is the first year that we're doing it. What we did was when we were asked by the mayor's office to provide some metrics for this current fiscal year, that we would make that determination what we want to track. And we thought community impact statements was something that we should track, given that neighborhood councils are advisory bodies to the city, and that this is one way that they are providing input on council files. And we used data from the previous years. We asked city clerk to provide us how many neighborhood councils have been filing. And the previous year was what, 214? Was it 216? The year before that was one. Yeah, I think it's about like one. I want to say 114. So we saw that there was an upward trend, and we've been really this past year focused on teaching advocacy and why neighborhood councils should weigh in on community impact statements. So we thought 300 was a realistic number. We're still crossing our fingers that that's going to be the case. Answer your question?
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Peter? You want to just ask it? Okay. So the question is, how about promoting EmpowerLA and or individual neighbor councils with insert language in DWP bills for water, power, sanitation, and in property tax bills? Okay, so the good news is that thanks to one of our DWP commissioners and also neighborhood council president, Joe Banks-Berard, we will have promotional materials in the DWP bills, I believe beginning in January. So we've been providing DWP with our logo and information so that we're working that out to coincide with the election cycle. And the property tax bills is the county thing, and I don't think that we would have much luck getting into those bills. But it's a good idea in terms of regular bills like gas bills. Can we utilize that stuff? But again, it's we have to look at our city partners, and that it'll be easier to try to create partnerships there than to try to go out county-wise.
And with city election pamphlets.
Yes, with city election pamphlets. That is a city clerk thing, and we would have to speak with the clerk on that. I believe the timing is off. But I think, again, in terms of realizing efficiencies in the city family, we are starting to look at how can we partner better. For instance, with city clerk will be taking over our payroll services for our department, so that we can actually focus the staff that works on our payroll more on neighbor council funding matters, and with clerk taking over our payroll functions. So we are trying to look for like partnerships like that, even within the city, to help us save resources and so that we can refocus it on neighborhood council issues. Questions? Yes.
Yes, and I apologize because I missed when you were talking about the budget history.
Yeah, no worries.
So it looks like when we go from 2.5 million to 3 million, one part of it is you get 4 additional headcount.
Yes.
If the budget you ended up with was, let's say, equivalent to what it is for 2013-14, what would the immediate impact be?
Okay, sure. So the question, if folks couldn't hear that, is if we basically stayed at what we have this current fiscal year, or even at the 95%, that starting point that was asked by the mayor to begin the budget talks, what's the immediate impact? And I think what you'll see it in definitely in outreach first, in funding. So those are the two areas where those positions would be really being placed, and that will be an immediate impact come July 1st. We'll definitely see it.
So the follow-up, would that mean that next year would feel more like where we're currently, as opposed to maybe improvements that you're trying to build, or would...
Well, right now, I don't think you would even see what we're doing this current fiscal year, only because we would have had funds for election outreach, and next year, if they were to take us back to that 95% or even at current budget, we would try to split it between staffing and maybe some outreach, but we actually have a lot of funds for outreach that we can do more things. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks, Peter. Another question. What is being proposed for fiscal year 2014-15 allowance for each neighborhood council? Okay, so basically the question is, what's the yearly allocation for neighborhood council general fund? At the beginning of the year, the general fund, the budget for the department and the neighborhood councils are transferred. The monies are transferred into what we call the 44B account, and then from the 44B account, the department has another account called the Fund 100, and from there, neighborhood council, the department's budget is shifted into there for salaries and expenses, and the neighborhood council's funding stays in the 44B account, and then is transferred indirectly into the neighborhood council's individual accounts. So while we prepare the budget all at once, we do have two separate. They are considered really two separate things at the end.
So as we're proposing a $3 million budget, why wouldn't we at this time be proposing a departmental budget with an increase for neighborhood councils rather than just leaving it to budget advocates?
Sorry, did you have?
Well, I guess, I mean, to clarify, the neighborhood council budgets are about 3.7 million that are completely separate from this number.
Right.
Aside from that.
Right. So again, this is our department budget, and we are preparing the department's budget allocation. So for neighborhood councils, I guess we could slip it in there. But usually we go by what we are told from the mayor's office. Other questions? Nothing on mine. Okay. All right. So if you have that, kind of takes us back. Hey, someone's coming just as we're wrapping up.
I timed it out well.
Yeah, no worries. We can chat after. So I do want to thank the budget advocates for their work. You know, I'm always saying I'm so grateful for our very passionate and talented volunteers because they make our jobs easier. Um, and we all have the same goal in terms of growing the neighbor council system and our belief in the neighbor council system. So definitely appreciate that. I have to appreciate our staff, our interns and volunteers, because this is not an easy job in terms of um, balancing between neighbor councils and the city and some of kind of trying to clear some of the bureaucratic red tape that sometimes is there unintentionally. And I think that our staff is doing a great job in helping neighbor councils in that regard. Obviously, all the neighbors say that we need to look at too, because don't forget that they only have their three attorneys who work with us to help all 95 neighbor councils. So we actually rely on them a lot. So if they're not funded enough for neighbor councils work, then it slows down our work on our side. And of course, the city clerk, who's helping us not only with elections, but with our payroll functions and our GSD, who help us with our personnel issues, and other city departments that are collaborating with neighbor councils so that neighbor councils can fulfill their mission of monitoring the delivery of city services through the city of Los Angeles. So I don't know if anyone has any last minute questions. Yes, sir.
From the point of view of advocacy, maybe in your presentation for the departmental budget, it would be worth a paragraph stressing that the implementation of the empowerment movement isn't solely dependent on the budgeting for the department, but also greatly dependent on the budgeting received by the individual neighborhood councils. And while as a department head, under the mayor and receiving instructions from the mayor, that we not rely on a review for the funding level solely on presentations by budget advocates, that the department itself points out that the budgeting for and the implementation for the department is only half or potentially less than half than the total empowerment movement. That it relies on the budgeting of the individual councils, and while as a department head you need to subscribe to mayoral leadership, we could point out the importance of the funding to individual neighborhood councils.
Yes, thanks, Peter. And for those of you who didn't hear that, we have a very passionate advocate who basically is saying that the department should also advocate on behalf of neighborhood councils being restored to their $50,000 allocation from several years back, their original allocation. And I would definitely see what we can do on our side. Yes.
I guess perhaps on a similar note, one of the biggest, I think, concerns on at least the local individual council level, not so much the budget advocates or any of the other groups, is outreach is something that seems to be the hardest thing to do across the board. But at the same time, there's a certain synergy that could perhaps be better utilized at the higher level, perhaps at the organizational level, and where we could, create a group that delves into outreach, because while there needs to be outreach at the local level that will hit upon the local needs, there's so many people across the board who have no idea what neighborhood councils are, and dollar for dollar wise, we could be better utilizing it if there was a clear across the board, super level of outreach on some level that everybody could either pull from as a resource or whatnot. And if it means, like they were saying, $50,000, but maybe we all get $50,000, but then we contribute, $8,000 back to this global outreach fund that we can then use as a resource to help us, either because they're professional PR people, because that's the other thing. We have people who want to and have their hearts are in the right place, but they're not PR marketing people, and I think sometimes they're asking too much of the people to create an outreach program on the fly on a volunteer basis with limited resources, and this is not necessarily something they do. And I think that to have a little bit more oversight and focus or resources for them to use on your level, if it means creating a new, focused person to go to or whatnot. I don't know what the answer is necessarily. I mean, I could sit here and probably start off 15 ideas.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that we should do any of them, but perhaps looking into something along those lines to create a little bit more synergy across the board.
Yeah. So the comment was, in case
It was a long comment.
not captured, I will summarize it. That basically, rather than necessarily just relying on the individual neighborhood councils to do their own outreach, that there could be some synergy that's captured if the outreach was done on like the department or even like the city family level, but with an idea that maybe one of the possibilities would be neighborhood councils contributing to like some type of outreach fund that would then hire professional PR people that could market neighborhood councils citywide. And that's a great idea, and I think we have been looking, multiple neighborhood council folks have suggested that. Even if you were to restore it at back to 50,000, that every neighborhood council is, told that they have to provide money back into this outreach fund. And then from this fund, professionals are hired to do a marketing campaign. Definitely something to explore. I think, again, whether we try to recapture unspent neighborhood council funds at the end of the year and set aside some type of fund that we did for the Congress of Neighborhoods and the budget advocates, where there was a fund that was limited to $100,000 and capped at $100,000, and neighborhood councils could contribute to that. Maybe do something similar with outreach as well. We can definitely explore that, and that's something that we would have to have city council approve in order to set that something like that up. But we can look into that, especially when we're looking around equity issues. We wanted to look at maybe setting up different accounts for different reasons, be it translation, capacity building, outreach. Those could be funds that are set up when we're looking at those issues.
Right, because a lot of the issues, translational issues across the board. I know we could have potentially calling service. In bankruptcy, it's used all the time.
Yeah.
And it's pretty. Sometimes there's some comedy, but it's usually pretty good.
Yeah.
And those are going to be issues that run across all the boards, and then the local level, we're not really equipped to handle them.
Right.
So, I mean, that's just an example.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Any other questions, suggestions, feedback?
I mean, kind of having, listened to Travis's suggestion, it's almost like maybe there would be an interim step, which would be what is the best form of outreach. I mean, I was kind of immediately crunching $8,000 by 100 neighborhood councils. That's $800,000. So you could probably have 6 to 8 bodies, I guess, doing something. You could have, regional outreach coordinators, or you could have centralized coordinators with maybe a couple of people working on things. But part of it would probably be just getting your arms around what neighborhood councils do. And it could go one of two ways. You could institutionalize that, or you would just build templates for neighborhood councils, to use. And there would probably be some neighborhood councils that would say, "Wow, we know what we do and we think it works great," and then there's other ones that clearly need the help. So maybe just for next year, it probably wouldn't be a high budget item to say we're going to have a conversation about outreach.
Right.
What might work best practices.
Right, and actually the Board of Neighborhood Commissioners, they are putting together a task force to do just that early next year. So they wanted to say what really works, what can we look into, exactly some of these options. Should we go hire a PR person to do some type of systemic citywide campaign. So, yeah, instead of everyone piecemealing it or reinventing the wheel in each of their neighborhoods.
It'd be nice, I know on the Van Eisenberg Council Board, we have some great ideas, but they're expensive ideas, and with that, the money being rolled over, I understand, and I think that's probably for the best. But it'd be nice if neighborhood councils developed kind of a plan, some type of well thought out report that dictated where future money would go. And if we could submit that, there was some kind of process that we would go through so that every year we could set aside $3,000 and then maybe on a 10-year long-term plan, execute it at the end of that 10 years with the knowledge that the money that we put aside is only going to go to this plan and can only be used within the guidelines of this plan that the neighborhood council developed. It may take a lot of time, but if there was just that one little caveat that we could actually roll over money, but for something specific and was already pre-approved, and it's going to happen 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, I think that'd be a huge benefit.
Yeah, the ability to assign funds for future projects has been looked at within the city. That can happen if you have a contract that's attached to it. I think the hardest part of this will be the actual accounting aspect of it and keeping track of the funds. And I'll tell you right now that the way the department is doing it right now it would not be able to handle something like that. Especially if it's like 10 years down the line. that might be difficult. The other thing, one more thing about that. I just left my mind. But yeah, it was rollover. Like when we did have rollover, there were a lot of issues with tracking, like who had what and how much and where did it go. And so that was one of the reasons rollover was eliminated. But like I said, for capital improvement projects, the neighbor councils do still have that ability. If you have a contract in place by the end of the year, we can definitely attach money if you have a contract. So so you can keep that in mind. Whether it's for an outreach plan, that's totally different. Because right now it's limited to
when there's funds at the end of the year that are left over, essentially swept, are they swept back into the department or are they swept back into city council's general budget?
it goes to the general fund.
Okay, so it doesn't stay within.
No, it doesn't stay within the.
Okay. Is there a possibility of maybe making a request for a 1 year, any funds that are rolled over be held for 1 year into the department so that way any larger projects, the neighborhood councils that would potentially require a larger fund can submit proposals and bids up towards some of that money. So, because there are some great projects that I know a lot of the neighborhood councils would love to do, but it would basically destroy their ability to even pay rent.
Right.
And so, but if they had, some neighborhood councils maybe not used all of it, and we can consolidate. Maybe you had a fund of 50,000, 100,000, and people could submit bids, and there's some sort of process to figure out, and it's held for 1 year, and at the end of the year, then it's swept into maybe the general fund, as it were, or maybe something along that line, because that may help with some of these larger projects that are quite frankly probably needed at some level.
Right.
And you did a little of that last year with the Congress.
Right. So again, it would have to be well thought out, like a well thought out process. If it's just we're just going to leave the money here, I think that won't work, because even with the city, other city departments, you have to have some type of contract. You have to have some kind of plan in place. It can't just be money that's just okay. We're just going to leave it there, and then hopefully somebody will write a grant. If there's going to be a grant program, that has to be set up, and the accounts that currently the neighborhood council funds are in, they're accounts that basically that used to be templates because the payment aspect of it. So if we can see improvements in terms of streamlining and speed and accountability, then this might be something that we can ask for next fiscal year to propose that based on the increased efficiencies. Hopefully, of the checking.
I mean, my thought would be, it seemed like last year there were some statistics floating around about how much money was allocated to the neighborhood councils, how much was, actually spent. Um, and it would be an interesting thing to kind of call that bluff to see how many detailed proposals you would actually get. I mean, if you were to throw something out there like there's the potential that there could be an extra $300,000, and these are sort of the parameters of grants that can be up to $10,000 that you could request, just to see, and maybe you would even throw it out in a way that we can't guarantee that any of these are going to happen. We want to have an idea of, first of all, I mean, if the first thing you said was, in order to even propose something, your neighborhood council has to have already spent all your money.
Yeah.
That probably narrows it down to how many neighborhood councils to begin with.
Yeah.
And then see what kind of proposal you get. There might not be a lot of harm there.
Right.
See, and if you got a fantastic proposal and you were able to get it in by, let's say, April 15th or something, based on funds that might be available on June 1st when things are still a little bit in play, then I have a feeling it would probably only be a couple of programs the first year that would come out of it, and then you could
Right. Yeah, no, that's definitely something that we can look at. There is, when you have some type of grant program like that, there's also not only like the application, acceptance, review, approval, there's also the tracking to make sure that it was actually done on time. So there's more staff, it's staff intensive. So I think that we would have to look at all of that in order to put together some type of plan.
In speaking about increasing outreach, and as regards the departmental budget, we mentioned BONK in its incipient new focus on outreach. Now, I realize we're not the BONK budget meeting, and this isn't specifically about BONK, but they have historically considered their agenda posting requirement to be outreach. And there was such negative reaction to the BONK's reconfirmation of the requirement for the multiple postings for those people who have a website and who announce their agenda electronically, that there seems to be the development of a new consensus within BONK that as compensation, BONK may go with less posting, but increased emphasis on greater outreach. And as part of that, they've announced their intention to develop this greater outreach program and implement it before the new fiscal year for neighborhood councils, that they've got to have the new requirements met and a new plan, and all has to be done by July 1st. And to the degree that you have experience with the pace at which proposals proceed and are developed, it just seems to me that while it's a good idea to do away with the posting requirement, that BONK's plan to have an entirely new agenda and points to be met and metrics and specific plans to develop before the new fiscal year budgets roll out is a little too aggressive and a little bit too much of a demand on neighborhood councils, especially during this period when we're having our elections. And BONK, as a majority, seems to have rejected the idea that they should be a little bit slower on this. But to the degree that this is part of outreach, and outreach is your budget, and we're focusing on your budget, I just think imposing extra new, highly developed and detailed requirements on neighborhood councils by July 1st is unwise and unhelpful. And I support BONK's going forward with increased detail, increased requirements, increased substance to outreach programs. But implementing this all in a rush by July 1st seems to me a bit much.
What is BONK?
The Board of Neighborhood Commissioners that supervises and advises, but their budget isn't specifically part of the department's budget, right?
Well, our support for the Board of Neighborhood Commissioners is part of our staffing. So Joe staffs the Board of Neighborhood Commissioners because he's doing policy, and they do policy.
But they have their own funding.
No, that's not a separate funding. It's that they basically are funded by and supported by our staff. Janet is the executive assistant for not only me and the managers, but also for the board neighborhood commission. We actually used to have an executive assistant just for the commission, but when we were cut a few years back, that was
Yeah, I don't know if our audience heard, but I just wanted to make a caution about the newly to be imposed outreach requirements from BONC before the new fiscal year is implemented.
right. So I just got a signal from Jose that you were heard on the Ustream. Anything else?
So, I don't know how other neighborhood councils are, but there's a handful of issues that are maybe it's just unique to the downtown neighborhood council. Sometimes getting some clarification from the city attorney's office, we either never hear back or it's 3 months down the road. Now, I don't know if it's possible to have some sort of outside counsel to just give counseling, and they're not going to be the final word on something, but give some guidance that neighborhood councils can reach out to with perhaps a little bit more speed in getting some sort of clarification on certain things. Because sometimes just an attorney saying something is sufficient, and it doesn't necessarily need to come down from the city attorney's office. Because sometimes they just need someone who's not on the board, who's not an attorney, that maybe is the city attorney's office. They don't have to necessarily. Someone who's an independent, voice with some sort of expertise and knowledge, saying something would sometimes be helpful. And I don't know if that's possible, but something along those lines would maybe help smooth things out. Just to hear something back, you can send a letter, call someone, and get a response back within a week or two, because I know sometimes the city attorney
right.
Not that it's anything against the city attorney, like they're busy people.
Yeah, right.
I understand that we're not always the highest priority on some of the bylaws interpretations of certain things.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean it doesn't bog things down at that level and people can't move along.
Sure. Jose, is that okay?
Yeah,
So okay, so I just want to make sure you were heard, so to repeat it. So I can check with city attorney in regards to that question about having outside counsel. I think, obviously the issue would be payment and is there funding for that? Would it be better just to apply, funding towards city attorney's office with the hope that they would add more neighborhood council advice division attorneys?
Again, if we were going to do something along the lines of the globalization of some of the neighborhood councils and take on some global costs, there could be perhaps a handful of, lawyers or offices on quote unquote retainer that they could call up
Right.
that have been prearranged. That way, neighborhood councils don't have to find them back their own lawyers.
Yeah.
Just a thought.
Okay. Thank you for that.
And then, maybe along the lines of what was said about that maybe it doesn't even always need to be an attorney, so maybe there could be some kind of a streamliner or expediter in the department that, first maybe the question would go there, and maybe there would be 50% of the things would be like, okay, we can just answer this
Right.
on our own, this doesn't need
Right.
to go. Or they had sort of the red phone to the city attorney's office or they could at least promise within a week you will know
Right.
this. Because a lot of times it's just about sort of knowing when, and then
Yeah.
you're not going to be expected to follow up and ask.
Yeah, I mean, we have our helpline where we can clear a lot of the questions. And we do have our neighbor empowerment analysts or advocates assigned to neighbor councils that help facilitate that conversation with the city attorney as well. If you have already contacted directly and you're not getting a response because there's only 3 of them for 95 neighbor councils. So let me follow up with that Travis, and then give you some feedback.
Yeah, again, it doesn't have to be like a formal official answer. Just I think sometimes people, minds differ on something, and just having almost a mediator sort of program, so to speak, rather than a formalized document, I think would be helpful.
So,
Maybe answering how-to questions. Not
right,
so much an official ruling is what to do now, how to do it.
right.
Right, because sometimes,
But that's basically like having a mentor at your meeting, right? Or using someone who's not.
I've argued with the mentor and I've been correct, and the mentor has said something otherwise, and we went with the mentor, and the mentor ended up being wrong.
Okay.
So
Okay.
again, I'm a lawyer, and so I'm coming from a different perspective, and I know
Sure.
I'm oftentimes arguing against non-lawyers.
Right.
Because not most of the mentors, I've not met a mentor who is one yet.
Right.
So I tend to speak a little bit different and on a different level and understanding a little bit differently. And so,
Okay.
in a certain respect, I also need someone to be a check on me because I know I'm the only lawyer on my board.
Right.
And I could probably just argue my way into it. And I probably show I need a check on me as well on occasion. So
Okay.
sometimes it would be good to have a lawyer at some level saying, Travis, come on.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's that thought as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I got one last question for you.
Sure.
Why are there so many vacancies in the department?
So, this is the current one, and there's only 3 vacancies. The neighborhood empowerment analyst is vacant because we were trying to actually make that into management analyst position instead. I don't know if you were here earlier when I was saying that for sustainability of the department and for promotional growth for our staff, neighborhood empowerment analysts are only in this department. So they don't have ability to transfer to other city departments if they wanted to actually, advance in their career. So we were hoping to actually to make the neighborhood empowerment analyst. We're exploring whether we can make that that class into management analyst class in general throughout the class. The accountant 1 position is vacant because it turns out that anybody promoting from an accounting clerk 2 position to an accountant 1 actually makes more money than the accountant 1 position because they have different bargaining units, and the accounting clerk 2, I guess their position had a better bargaining unit than the accountant 1. So when we tried to fill that position, we encountered that issue. So that's why we're going to ask for it to be an accountant 2 position where the pay scale is higher, so that we could have more options in terms of bringing somebody in. The systems analyst position is vacant because the person in it transferred to LAPD. Actually, we lost our last systems analyst to LAPD as well. And we have been using a student professional worker to assist us from an ITA has been helping us with that. And they and we found that actually we didn't need the system analyst position. We really needed like more of a fiscal systems person, so that someone who understood the systems and also the accounting. And so that's why we're going to request that position be changed into a fiscal systems specialist. Only 3.
There's 4 new added for the next year. And then you don't have to go through them, that's fine.
Yeah.
As far as, is there just I guess, how do you guys go about filling those spots? And are they just through the city website?
Sure.
For all the rest of the spots?
So the question's on how to fill the 4 additional spots plus the 3. So the management analyst, fiscal systems accountant, and the chief MA, those positions have to be filled within the city, either through a lateral transfer or promotional opportunity. And the ones that are open that we can hire off the street are project assistants and project coordinator. They're considered exempt. However, those exempt positions are harder to get because there's so few. There's a limit to the number of exempt positions in the city, and they're usually high in demand. So I don't know if we would get those positions, or they might give us something like another management analyst if they were to give us anything. They might make it into a civil service class position instead.
Does the department release like a requirements and expectations?
Yes, we work with the personnel department to release job duty descriptions, and it for any of these positions, they would be released through the personnel department, and they post them at their offices that off away from here, just down the street.
I'm sure they do it
And
online as well.
And online, yes.
Are so is the clerk job description, is that cause it to be in a different bargaining unit than the accounting job descriptions?
Yeah, there's just unions that represent certain classes. So the ones that were in the accounting clerk position were in a different bargaining unit that was more successful, I am told, in negotiations, and that's why their step 5 of that lower position is higher than the step 5 of an accountant position.
And the reason I ask that, and I don't know how much this comes up in the city, but one thought comes to mind that if you've got a position like an accountant 1 that is effectively not even being used, I mean, if other departments are having sort of the same issue as you, you would maybe have a conversation with personnel about, well, is this something on your radar screen in terms of managing, job titles?
Yeah, I definitely something we've already talked about
Yeah.
with personnel about because of our difficulty in filling that position. Yeah, it's frustrating when you get a position and you're allowed to fill it to your managed hiring committee and you can't find anybody. And when you're desperate need of positions, it's very frustrating.
And there's not a way for you to go outside.
No, I can't because of the civil service class, and you must test into those positions, or test into the lower positions, work in those positions, and then promote up. So they typically open it for transfer initially, and then after that, they'll go for promotional opportunities. And you also have to understand too that we're small departments, and a lot of like accountants, I think their ideal jobs may be going to bigger departments like controller and CAO because they have more opportunities to promote, right? So that's the other disadvantage of being a smaller department as well. We don't have people like, trying to jump into our department all the time. But I think it's a cool department, so.
Well, I would think there's
like
a lot
it.
of opportunity. You can sell, like, this is a system where we're making a lot of changes to become much, much, much more efficient. So that
Yeah.
The same amount of people can process a lot more.
Right.
And it would seem like you could probably write a pretty awesome letter of recommendation for somebody if they were able to come in and take it from A to B and have testimonials from all of the systems.
I agree. But again, as a small department, because you have so few promotion opportunities, that when you do get somebody in who promotes in, then likely they'll be here for a few years and they're going to promote out, right? So then you lose that knowledge base and you just kind of start all over again. So it's it's been challenging, but as I said before, I think our staff have really stepped up to the plate, particularly in the times that we've been cut, and made the system work, and with the help of neighborhood council stepping up, like you guys, I mean, that's been amazing in itself. These past 4 or 5 years where we've really been challenged. So I definitely appreciate not only staff but obviously the neighborhood councils as well. Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you again for participating, and any questions, feedback, anything else, please feel free to email, and we'll be releasing our or at least submitting our final budget this week, so we'll release more details about it later on next month. Okay, have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we know how many people were remotely with us tonight?
7 million
And,
Good night, Sue.
roundabout there, plus or minus 6